Andy McDonald.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as Shadow Transport Secretary for 4 years, I was wholly supportive of this concept. I just want to correct the member for Clacton, who completely misunderstands the basis of it, because the purpose, I'm sure the Secretary of State will agree with me, was to deliver capacity for the north of England. Speed was a misnomer, but that opportunity has now been lost. I just wonder if she could give me some assurance that with the upgrade to the TransPennine upgrade, that those skills and expertise will be rolled out across the entire north of England, not just the northwest and Yorkshire, but through up into the northeast, to include the continuing rolling programme of electrification. I'm specifically thinking of Northallerton through to Middlesbrough and beyond, because that is where we get the GVA and economic growth from. Can we have some assurance that those ambitions will not be fettered one jot by this damning indictment of the last 15 years of failure?
I can assure my honourable friend that this government 100% recognises the need to improve rail connectivity in the Midlands and the North. He's also right to highlight the need for a pipeline of investment, a stable pipeline, so that the supply chain can plan and we don't lose skills. We've got an ambitious programme as the government on rail, things like East-West Rail, as well as the TransPennine route upgrade HS2. And I'm determined that we build on this country's proud railway heritage and make sure that we've got railways moving forward that are fit for the modern day.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And Devon and Cornwall rail network are only one severe storm away from being decapitated at Dawlish. Phase 5 of the South West Rail Resilience Network is desperately needed. When will the Minister come and visit the line to see how desperately needed it is? Thank you.
I do know that Dawlish is a very beautiful part of the country, and so I am very tempted to take him up on his invitation. I know this is the second time in this statement that the issue with the Dawlish programme has been raised. I undertook to his colleague to speak to the Rail Minister about that subject, and I will come back to him in writing at the same time as I do to his colleague.
Nick Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Secretary of State for her statement today. HS2 has been an abject failure of political accountability by the last administration. Yep. On transport efficiencies, can I ask the Secretary of State to press on with reforms to the Driving and Vehicle Standards Agency to fix the driving test system to keep our country moving?
We do have a really important programme of work across all the arm's length bodies of the Department for Transport, including DVSA. It is really important that we provide public services in an efficient way and an effective way. And I'm very conscious of perhaps his constituents and those of other honourable members who may be very keen to see rapid progress on driving test wait times, and I can assure him that that is a focus of the discussions that I'm having with the DVSA at present.
Mark Francois.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As I too served on the PAC, I welcome the Secretary of State's statement today. I know from that work that whilst HS2 is by far the largest civil infrastructure programme in the United Kingdom, the second largest is the Lower Thames crossing from Tilbury to Gravesend, currently budgeted at about £10 billion. If her tighter approach to HS2 produces savings, is there any way that some of those might be vired to help pay for the Lower Thames crossing? And if not, which private sector companies exactly are going to pay for it? Because so far, I'm afraid, the government has been rather vague on that point.
We are exploring finance options with regard to the Lower Thames crossing. We announced on Monday of this week £590 million of public funding this year to take forward utility works, some land purchases. I will be saying more to this House in future about the private finance arrangements that we are exploring.
Clive Efford.
Deputy Speaker, I commend my right honourable friend on the swift actions that she's taken to try and put right this disastrous situation created by the previous government. The parallels here between the fast-track contracts for PPE can't be ignored. I understand that contracts were signed that where the appropriate decisions hadn't been made prior to those contracts being signed. Will those people who sign those contracts be interviewed? Will they have to explain why they decided to take these decisions against advice, and will we be getting any of that money back?
As I said in my statement, the Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet Secretary to investigate whether the James Stewart report raises any questions for the civil service or wider public sector. He's completely right to highlight this point about contracts being signed with construction companies even before the scope of the works had been concluded. So it's little wonder that we as a country have ended up paying more when we've signed a contract with a company to deliver works, and yet there was no clarity whatsoever about what the work was that the government wanted them to do. And so this is a dreadful and woeful failing of oversight on the part of previous government ministers, and it's one that I won't allow to happen on my watch.
Lisa Smart.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before I was elected to this place, I was a member of HS2's independent panel for the Community and Environment Fund and the Business and Local Economy Fund, and the Secretary of State's statement today makes for some pretty shocking reading. Talk of fraud and of shambolic mismanagement should bring shame on everybody involved in it. One of the problems with HS2 was always the naming of it, focusing on speed rather than on capacity. My Hazel Grove constituents use the West Coast Main Line, and they talk to me about the problems of capacity still remaining. Indeed, I see it every week when I come up and down to work. The Secretary of State has said that she's not reinstating the line from north of Birmingham. She's also talked about Transpennine work that's underway. What specific work is being undertaken by her department looking at capacity on the West Coast Main Line north of Birmingham?
I am aware that the mayors of the West Midlands and Greater Manchester have put some proposals to the government on particularly this issue about the fact that in the mid-2030s we're likely to see severe capacity constraints between Birmingham and Manchester. We're reviewing those proposals, and I hope to be able to say more on that in the months ahead.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and could I thank the Secretary of State for the honesty in which she's addressed these very difficult issues. Madam Deputy Speaker, may I also ask the Secretary of State to say a little bit more about the lessons that can be learnt from the success of the Elizabeth Line, both in terms of the far superior leadership and management in the programme, but also the economic benefits that have been generated, with £18 billion invested in capital, yielding £42 billion of benefits just in the first 3 years of this amazing piece of infrastructure.
I must admit that the delivery of the Elizabeth Line, whilst it was one of my proudest achievements when I was serving as the Deputy Mayor for Transport in London, it wasn't without its challenges as well. I would reflect that the trust that existed ultimately between Transport for London and the delivery project and the transparency and honesty with which different parts of the system work with one another was one of the final ways in which we got that project over the line, and it was one of the proudest days for me to see Her Former Majesty Queen Elizabeth come and open the Elizabeth Line at Paddington shortly before she passed away. There is a lot of learning that we need to take from Crossrail. We are doing that, and we are determined to get on and see this railway opened.
Blake Stevenson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, East West Rail is due to travel through my constituency of Mid-Bedfordshire on the historic Marston Vale line. Can the Secretary of State set out how she'll ensure that the mistakes made on HS2, and we've heard some shocking stories today, won't also be made on East West Rail? I'm afraid there's very little confidence in the East West Rail Company, and it's important that my communities are listened to and that we ensure that we deliver this infrastructure faster at lower cost, and that people who are impacted are properly compensated.
The nature of East West Rail is fundamentally different from the construction of HS2. He will know that it has been delivered in 3 phases. It's only the latter phase of that between Bedford and Cambridge which will actually necessitate the construction